Good morning. See that a lot of ideas are already almost replaced, which is good. But I'm going to mess up a little bit with your mindset because I'm going to show you a couple more ways of using decision making in different situations. And who knows, you might find something that works better with your optimization plan. So, what's the plan for the day? We are going to see three different things. And then you will be able to spread out and start working outside. I will always be in that small room, so you can come, even discuss what you're working on or show me something that is not working. You will always be finding me there. So it's easier for you. Let's see now. Three different topics. Rate. This is what we use when we don't have one or two or even three alternatives, but we have a lot. Think of 50 different options that we need to run, or 100. In those cases, as you can guess, if we had to do pairwise comparisons, we would be here for a couple of months. However, using ratings, we can avoid. Why? Because the idea is that the top part, the goal criteria and sub-criteria, get evaluated using pairwise comparisons, while the bottom part, the alternatives themselves, get scored against some criteria that you define. Values like 1, 2, 3, but more specific scales that you have defined to something that you deem that is not very important. Probably you would assign it a scale that doesn't have many levels. Like you could say high, medium, low, or good, average, bad, something simple. Something, a criterion that has a lot of weight and it's really important for your decision. You will assign it a scale that has different levels, like excellent, above average, average, below average, poor. Make sense? Now, from a technical perspective, that means that we have a process that is very fast. What's the catch? Because there is always something, right? Well, you have to be able to define your ideal solution. Think, for example, if you are talking about hiring process, you have your ideal candidate in your mind. So you can set it up as ready. I receive a candidate application. I will rate. What I'm going to do is before the process starts, talk with the people that are involved, like the head of the department that's going to receive a specific applicant, maybe also a couple of the senior members of that team, and find out together what are the criteria, what are the things that we are looking. Some of the criteria will be related to the team, some to the knowledge, and some other would be related probably with the overall concept of the company. What kind of people do they want to have? So as far as we can have something that is an ideal, a benchmark, we can go for ratings. The other thing is that ratings require someone that is very knowledgeable about the alternatives themselves. Why? Because when you rate, you don't have your safety net of the pairwise comparison. You are assigning a value to each of the alternatives. If you don't know enough about the field, that missing knowledge will be very, very obvious in a ratings model. While, let's say, having partial knowledge of the field can be kind of covered from the pairwise comparisons because it leads you and supports you through the process of, is this more than that or that more than that? And it helps you work through it. Make sense? The other thing that we need when we are using ratings is to have alternatives that are independent. If the alternatives relate to each other, then you cannot score them independently, and you are losing all this framework that you want to use. Bottom line, for using ratings, 3 conditions. Be able to identify what is the ideal solution. And whenever we have some kind of either policy or legislation or rules that we have to follow, we can set up the ideal. What's the 100% safe bridge in Pittsburgh? We have a full set of points that we can check and say this bridge is completely safe. And we can independently mark all the other bridges against the benchmark. So I don't care if bridge B or C has some problem, it doesn't reflect or affect them. However, later on, when I'll end up with 5 bridges that are at the same level that need repairs and my budget is not enough, we'll have to do some pairwise comparing, but it would be another process, another level in our decision. So ratings, we use them when we have a lot of alternatives. They are independent of each other. We have enough knowledge of the field to be able to do correct assignments of scores. And we have the ability to identify the ideal solution. Never score like you know what are the alternatives when you have ratings. And what I'm saying is kind of hard. You will notice it if you will need to use ratings. The fact that I know what is in the next line should not affect my answer. For example, let's say that I have a Fiat. Yes, there are those small Fiat Cinquecento cars that we really like in Europe, okay? And the next line has, just to keep it in Italy, a Ferrari. You cannot show that you know that the other option is Ferrari. Your scoring has to do with the specific car that you are looking at. You cannot say, let's put also in this mix a Tesla, okay? And I have Prestige. When you go to Prestige, you cannot say that Tesla doesn't give some prestige because you know that Ferrari is more prestige. You'll have to forget that there is something better. I individually, Tesla would get probably an above average the prestige for. Yes, for the prestige, but Ferrari will have get then. Yeah. Unless you have the excellent, and then you would give the excellent. So you see, although it comes natural that you would like to show that Ferrari has more prestige than anything else, you're not allowed to show that you knew it when you were scoring. It's like with applications. If I give over here to Brand 100% for the interview, I cannot and should not be conditioned that the next day I met James, and I wanted to give him 100% and go back to Brad in 99. So see, I cannot do it. Not 100%. He can get at best 100% again. I cannot improve my judgments because I'm comparing them. Because they are completely out of context. You have to get out of the context that you are evaluating. Each of your alternatives by itself rated. That's why we call them ratings, because we rate individual solutions. We do not try to find relative judgments and relative comparisons. Good thing, you will never see rank reversals by adding or removing alternatives in a ratings environment. What do I mean? When you have AHP and you have 3 options, adding a 4th option in the mix might lead you to needing to reevaluate the scores. Think about it like this. I'm trying to find a small apartment to rent, okay? The first apartment that I see is, I love it, it's super cool, but it's slightly above my budget. It's $50 a month more than what I was planning to spend. And I say, okay, probably not. The second apartment that I find is $300 above my budget. And not so super. I mean, they sell it as something really exceptional, but I didn't love it. And the third one is well within my budget. Don't love it, don't hate it. I'm going for that option, right? Next day, someone finds one more apartment and they say, why don't you look at it? It's like the first one, but they are renting it $300 more. And that's the point that I realized that those $50 were not that bad at the end of the day. And I say, hey, I'm changing my rating. I'll put this $50 extra in because it seems that it was a good deal, actually. Everybody else that is giving the same things are asking much more. So the initial one that looked like a little bit above budget, a little bit worse than what we wanted it, now it comes to be the best solution. That's what we call rank reversal. With options A, B, and C, A was coming second in my preference. With options A, B, C, and D, A became first in mine because I had a different comparison. I was able to understand the situation in a different way, which is good for the quality of the results, but it's bad if you're adding and removing alternatives because it means that you have to reevaluate the situation. In ratings, however, that doesn't happen. You can add and remove alternatives as much as you want. The only thing that you will always need to do is, if you're adding, rate the new alternative because they are independent to each other. So there is no need to reevaluate in this kind of situations. So what's the methodology in these cases? Well, you create an AHP model, but you don't add alternatives to that model. Why? Because the alternatives will come in a second step separately. We do the criteria, sub-criteria as much as we want them. We pairwise compare them to get the weights for the criteria. And then we say, from all the criteria that we were working on, we decide which ones we are going to introduce in the rating side of the model. Why? Because I might want to skip some that are not very important. Also, usually, if we have a lot of different levels, we keep the criteria that are at the bottom level in our ratings model. I won't put cost and cost sub-criteria. I'll either choose to put cost or it's sub-criteria. And it's a matter of choice. Both of these options would be okay, but one of the two. And at this point, I want to show you how it would look. A model like choosing the best city to live in. Now, the top is the goal. First level, the criteria that I find for choosing what's the best city to live in. What do I have? I have cultural, family, housing, jobs, transportation. Okay. Now, underneath, you see the different scales that I decided to use in order to rate the cities that I'm going to evaluate. For example, for how much satisfying is the cultural scene of the city, I'm using extreme, great, significant, moderate, and bad. You see that there are some numbers underneath it, right? These are the priorities that I associated each of the levels of the scale. Normally, or should I say, usually, in survey type, when you use scales, you have to do the same way. Right? You can create your own scale. And the scale can have wider ranges for the parts that you're not so interested in, and smaller and more detailed ranges for the parts that you cared about. These numbers are out of the pairwise comparison. So if you put in a table extreme, great, significant, moderate, and bad, both sides, compare, these are the numbers that you're going to get. I'm saying that extreme with respect, the questions would be, how much more important for me, for my problem, is extreme versus great? And I might say that extreme is twice as good as great, and continue like that. That's how I form the scales. I always need to do that. Nope. There will be scales that I can say, hey, this is a 10, this is a 9, a 7, a 6. I'm looking to that. So I will say the numbers and you just give me the priorities automatically. Or there are other times that I tell you, use an existing scale and I enter directly the values that I need. This is the 100%, this will be about 80% and go on. How do I know which one to use? I try, and it always depends on the problem. For example, if it's distance, I could put the actual distance as a vector and it will give me the priorities that correspond. But sometimes I will not want to do it. For example, how far away you are from the family. It depends. If I have over there as family, my parents, I think that I would like them to be close. If we have in that build my mother-in-law, I'm not sure that I'll put the same scale, see? It depends on how you use, sorry, mother-in-law, but yeah, still, I went a few countries away from there. Same thing, for example, with the jobs. If I'm planning to look for a job or I'm worried about my job position, the priority that I'll give to whether I can easily find work or not will be higher than if I'm going with my job position and I'm really not planning, at least not in the next few years, to look for work. And the results will be the sum product of our priorities that we assign to the alternatives, the scores, and the priorities of the criteria, which obviously will be calculated from our tools. But the whole idea is that you multiply the level that you got from the scale to the priority that that criterion has, and you get an overall score for your alternatives. Why is that important? Because criteria that are more important will affect more your results than criteria that are less important. And if you have criteria that are about the same, then you might see solutions that balance out each other just because, for example, one has a very good score on family and the other one has a very good score on housing. And both of them had a high priority in my way of thinking. Over here, you see how it looks when you manually create, you pairwise compare each of the scales. For example, you see the first scale that I have, that is extreme, great, significant, moderate. And I'm saying extreme, it's 2.3 times more than great. Sounds kind of strange, right? I didn't really put pairwise comparisons there. I gave the priority that I wanted. When you start seeing in the comparisons decimals, you know that someone entered directly the values and the system automatically created the list. So the priority that I wanted, that you see it over here, was to say 56, 57% will mean extreme. then 23% is great, and 10% is significant. Almost 1% is moderate, and we are approximating even less with that. This is what I wanted to do, and this is what the system provided for me. Why does it show me the judgments anyway, since I gave priorities? In case that you want to make one or two small modifications after your initial idea. So as I have the table here, I am able to say that, you know, when I said extreme 2.3 of grade, I didn't really mean it. It's a little bit less. Let's go for 2. And I would change it, and the scale will be updated, and the results would be updated accordingly. Let's see now. This is how we do ratings. And let's go from the Python side so we can see how we implement that. You should be able to see my files. And more than that, just let me create a new file. If you have Visual Studio Code, as we had it yesterday, you should be able to see on our Teams a link. Click on that link while I create a new file, and I'll send you. Oops, sorry. I'll put it just in case on Teams again. Now, with that link that I gave you, you should be able to see and copy whatever I write on my side. It's in Teams general channel, and it should be named live share. Did you find it? Excellent. Were we all able to connect? Okay. Step first, when we create a ratings model, put in the libraries from the previous file. I'm not doing something smart. And also create your model. This is the same process that you will be using every time now. Because probably for most of you, it's the first time that you're using live share, open a new tab and start using it for your own code. You can copy from what you see me typing, but you cannot run, obviously, or edit my code. However, instead of typing or trying to find the code, you can copy the one that I'm writing in front of you. So you should be able to see what I'm writing and copy it. As soon as I accept, if I haven't accepted all of you. And I've put over there the first line so you can try it. I know they are the imports, so you have them anyway. I just want you to try it so we can see you. Whoa, what is okay, I have some accepts to do, sorry. So open next a new Python file. So you are ready. And I can show you the steps that we do for a ratings model. So first lines, which you will use whatever you do with your AHP and ANP library. You import the library. Second line, you create your model. Content in the codes. Do not use numbers. And do not put spaces in the variable names. Step number 2, which you remember. You will need to be able to read the model structure You don't have yet the Excel. We'll create it together. Actually, we will edit the Excel that you already have. A rating structure is the same with the AHP structure that we have. Just need to delete the line that corresponds to the alternatives. Same for the connections. Remove the connections that correspond to the alternatives. Do you have chairs? So the file, open your previous structure file. Oh, thank you. Can't see anybody. It. If I ignored anybody, just send again the share request. So create or rename and move your folder, your car model structure. Now this time I'll be fast. Create or rename your car model structure. This is the name that I gave my file, Rockstar. I think that I'm doing all my steps for the day. So delete the last line from your original file, so you don't have the alternatives over here. See? The same with yesterday's folder.
to download the Excel file.
Which Excel file? No, you had it from yesterday. You delete the last row from the first page from the struct, and from the connections, you will delete the rows that correspond to the alternatives and the columns that correspond to the alternatives. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you, what? You have to click the, it didn't pop up, or at least not yet. All right. Let's focus at seeing a little bit the process, and when I'll come back down, we can see the issues that you're having. First step, I took my original Excel structure file and I removed from there the alternatives. So my structure Excel does not contain any alternatives. Not in the connection side, not in the struct side. Remember that in order for it to work, you need to have all the nodes that are present in the structs in the connections and the other way around. Second step, in order to define that this model is a ratings model, is to say that your model is ratings, which you do with a command set model type ratings. Then we are going to add criteria and alternatives. Let's see these two commands one by one. Add criteria by name, that's a command that I'm using. It means that you have to put exactly the name that you gave the criteria. If you don't use exactly the name, space, and everything, it won't find it. You will end up in an. Another command that is available is add criteria by variable, by var. But right now, because we use Excel, we don't have variables. That's why I'm using the by name. Add alternatives by name. We do not have the alternatives anywhere at this point of time. You can put whatever names you want and as many names as you want. And you see that I have more than we had, including my favorite Fiat and Mini Cooper. What have I done up to this point? Let's use a print struct command so you can see what's the situation. By the way, that when it comes to be a little bit too much to read what's happening, you can also click clear. Now, notice something. I am working in different folders. If you are also working in different folders, then every time that you run a code, you have to make sure that you are in the folder that has your exam. In my case, the folder that has my exam is called ratings car. So before running my code, you see me saying, going to that from the terminal side. If you have everything in one folder, you will never need to do that. I need to do it because I have a folder structure. So you see me first navigating to the folder ratings card. That's the folder that I have my files, and then running the code. And let's read so we can understand what's happening. The print struct result. Type of model now is ratings. Why it's ratings? Because I set model type to ratings. These are all the nodes that I created, including the alternatives that I did not add through the Excel spreadsheet. I add them through my add ratings alternatives command here, add alternatives by name command. Clusters are the groups that I had created in my Excel spreadsheet, the first column of the struct page of the spreadsheet. Connections are the connections that we originally set up. In a ratings model, the only connections that you should be seeing are from goal to criteria, from criteria to sub-criteria. Now, there is an extra piece because we have defined the model as ratings. Now it says, these are the criteria that you decided to use for your ratings part. How does it know? These are the criteria that I added in the add criteria by name part. Same for alternatives to be rated. These are all the alternatives that will be used in the ratings part. Remember that in order to use ratings, you need to have a lot of alternatives. If you have one or two, it would actually 2 or 3, it wouldn't make sense to go to ratings. Rarely you would do it, unless you are expecting to receive more and more as the days go by, and then you would have more, that idea. Scales available to use and criterion selected scales are still empty. That's the symbol for we haven't given values. These are the steps that we need to do next, which would be, first, I'll define all the scales that I need. How many scales I need? At most, as many as the criteria that I will be using. Most of them than not, I'll reuse the same scale for more than one criteria. So very often you will see me to use the high, medium, low, or whatever is something related to high, medium, low for the criteria that don't have a very high priority. How do I add scales? Well, first of all, I will define the scales. There are 3 ways of using scales. By reading an existing file, you will not have that option because you haven't created yet files that have rating scales. It's for reusing scales later on. But you can either directly or using your Excel to add ratings. And let's see each of them. In the first part, I am creating a scale and also assigning priorities. What are the priorities? The numbers that you see after the name of each item. More than 30,000 has a priority of 51. Between 25 and 30 has a priority of 100. Between 20 and 25 has a priority of 39, and less than 20 has a priority of 9. What do I mean? They don't adapt one. Why did I do it? I put 100 to the one that I thought that would be the best option. 51 to my second best, and then 39 to the third and fourth option. Who told me how to do that? Me. I was trying to buy a car, and I would rather buy a car that is between 25 and 30. If I cannot do that, I don't want to go under 25,000, so it has lower priority. I'm okay, quite okay, to go over if it's needed. I had in my mind to spend about 30,000 for a car, right? So going above was, okay, I'll probably manage. I hope not a lot above. Yes. Yes, yes. You could, a trick that we do when we have ranges, if you don't have a personal preference, use the right side of the range. So the 30, 30, 35, or 50, and go on. However, here, I wanted to show that I would rather go over than under. I didn't want to buy a car with less than 25,000 because I presume that it won't be as good car as the rest that I was talking. So instead of putting the priority with the numbers, I had to take it in the qualitative side to show that, although the number is above what I want, is something that I really like. I would like to go over there. Make sense? And you can use any kind of number. So you could easily say 2, 1, 3, 4. It will give you the same result, the correct result that you want. This is you setting the priorities that you want to use in any way that you want, including using actual numbers. So you could put distances if you wanted, and it would work. The other way of entering values is this one. In this case, I am giving a rating scale, and I'm giving also the exact priority that I want to use. Now, if I don't actually have, or I need to enter my own values for a scale, I would omit the part that has the numbers. So I would say the names of the scale, but I will not put any numbers after. Now, I think that I need for our criteria one more scale. Notice that after creating each scale, I'm also adding it to the model. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see that it's available. And if I run it at this point, although I don't have all the scales that I need, you will see that the scales that we have added appear with the priorities that we will be using in our calculation. So these numbers that are as values here are the actual numbers that will be used in the calculations already. Now, we wanted one more scale to use. Let's put yep.
So this is just for the first criteria.
Any criteria that you want. So you add the scales, and in the next few steps, you will see that you will assign scale to criterion. So you create first all the scales that you want to use in the model, and then you will decide where to assign each of them. You use whatever is at the bottom level of your model. So if you have cost and some criteria of cost, technically you can choose whether you'll assign it to cost, but not have the sub criteria in your ratings, or to the sub criteria. we usually suggest to use the sub-criteria, the bottom level, and not the top. But it would work in both ways. Now, the high, medium, low scale that I just added over there is a scale that I had no idea what values to give. So it's an empty scale right now. It doesn't have priorities. As you see, I put the names, but I did not put the values. And you see me just running again the code, because what I want to do is to show you that the high, medium, low, it's the last one that you see down there, has all the items of equal priority for now. 1, 1, 1. Because I haven't given any judgments, I gave only the names. Now, in the example that you will see, I'm using also a scale from a file. However, we are not gonna do it now. So give me a second. In other words, do not copy until I finish the command. I'm going to create manually the last scale as well. And you see how you create manually a scale. You just put the names that you want. I want one that has a lot of levels, so I'm putting them all there. Excellent, above average, average, below average. And this method, you're the super user. You decide how many levels you want. However, I personally believe that you use more levels when there are items that have more details and higher priority. So I tend to use scales that give you more detail in things that I care a lot about. And in things that I don't care that much, another perspective could also be depending on what you are expecting to see in the alternatives. So things, let's see. Let's go back to the renting an apartment, okay? If the prices that you have seen so far are 1,500, 15, 16, 17, 18, I'll make a scale that will help you put each alternative in a different group. If there are houses around 1,500 and others at around 5 and others around 3,000, I'll make a scale that will give me that discrimination, won't put everything together in a group. Otherwise, it would be kind of useless. So depending on the values that you will have to classify, you create the size of your classes. That's kind of the idea. Make sense? And still, although it won't be coding, it's the idea. If you try to analyze or classify something and everything is falling into the same category, you know that you haven't done something wrong with your categories. Think again about the categories and make sure that some of your results fall in a different category. Otherwise, really that criterion is not helping you do anything. If everything gets multiplied by 3, there's no reason that you have it. Either find a way to break them down, a logical way that makes sense, or accept that that criterion will not help you with your alternatives and take it out. Don't be scared to make a simple model. Most of the times, a simple model will help you more to decide than a very complex one. You do want the people that are deciding to be able to stick with it. And not only that, but also be able to keep their idea of what they are trying to put in as values there. Because if you ask me something, 200 questions, at some point I'll get bored. I mean, even if I have every good intention, I'll get bored and I'll stop giving you really accurate results. Good. One more scale is there. And that's the point that we do the assignment. In order to use scales, assign the scale, the criteria, and I put the names for both scales. So scale name, criterion name. Can I reuse them? Yes, you can reuse a scale. The criteria have appeared only once in each setup. So you are assigning a scale for criteria by its name. And just a typo from the last one. Let's fix it. You don't need to have the same variable name and name, obviously. It just happened that I didn't want to type something. Now, if you run again your code, nothing went wrong. It takes selected scales for each of them, meaning this is the criteria, which goes, and this is the scale, and goes on. These are really the last lines that we wrote over there, just as part of the model. That's how we know that everything that we said was registered correctly. Remember that when you write a code, even this kind of simple commands, you need to run each command every time that you add a command. Otherwise, you will have a very difficult problem to debug. So remember, every time that you add something, you try it and then you continue. Now, next step is the one that you already know. What we did also yesterday. What do I mean? Create an empty file, enter judgments, and read the judgments to do the calculations for the priorities. These are the 3 commands that we used yesterday. The command that you don't see there is the one that would generate the sensitivity analysis. Why? Because it wouldn't make, it's not exactly the same, the sensitivity analysis in a ratings model and in an AHP model. So now, when running the model, you will be able to see an empty get an error if you don't have that, you won't have the filled in, but you can copy my filled in. And you will see that I have two types of empties and filled ins. Let me explain that to you. The ratings process over here, you do the first Excel to create the structure and the connections. Then you go inside your code to define scales and assign scales to criteria. The third step is pairwise compare the criteria. And this will give you the criteria results, the priorities of the criteria. This file over here that I have generated, criteria results, is the one that contains the priorities. The fourth step would be to generate a ratings table file which would be empty. Then you are going to fill it in. And that will give you the final results. It looks like the previous set of commands. A lot. Create the ratings table empty. Fill it in. Calculate the final result. Let's go and see the Excel spreadsheets. We have. You can grab it from my side if you want, from the live share. We have criteria empty. The empty gets generated with a command that says export Excel questionnaire. Same for the ratings table with the command that says create empty. It was the name of the last scale. I'll take you there. Here. My typo was this, the excellent to poor. I named it differently than what it was originally. I'm gonna check it in a little bit, okay? Who was asking about the empty files? Here is how you generate the criteria empty file. See, line 75 on mine. And here is how you generate the ratings table empty file. Okay. Now let's go back at looking how these files look like. This is the empty of the criteria. Notice that there are no alternatives in here, okay? I am going to, can you copy from my live share the Excel files? If you try to Control C, Control V, can you take them or not? If not, I'll put them in your Teams. Empty, filled in. Actually, you should be able to generate the empty ones. I'll give you just the filled ins, hoping that we have the same structure, of course. The filled in for the ratings, which is the one that we care about, will look like this. One side are my scales. The ones that have already values in there are the ones that we enter values in our definition. For example, this is the one that I was saying, those 51, 139, 90. You see the priorities that match what I entered as a value. While the comfort and style, resale value, it had the high, medium, low. And here is the values that I entered for high, medium, and low. I defined that high is 3 times more important than medium, and medium is 2 times more important than low. So I just entered the pairwise comparisons as you were doing with the criteria. Again, you can avoid it if you want to avoid it just by entering the initial values. You don't need to go to pairwise comparisons unless you need a lot of details at that point. The important thing from this ratings file filled in is the second part. Here is where you rate each alternative. And the way that you do it, you, the decision maker, the one that is evaluating, is by using the drop downs. These are the names of the scales that you created, see? And you say, Toyota Highlander, initial cost, more than 30,000. Toyota Highlander, monthly payment, I deem it high. Resale value, high. Reliability, based on my knowledge, excellent. And I go on and I fill it in for all of them. By filling in using the drop down, I'll get my results. The totals, you can see it because the formula is visible there. It's just the sum product of the score that you gave them times the priority of the criteria that you are using. See? The number that you see in the second column is this same set of values, but normalized so you can have them adding up to 1. So actually, if I wanted, I could even visualize the results that I'm getting. And you would see that, who was talking about the Subaru Outback yesterday? The Subaru Outback would be getting a higher individual score because now, remember, I had to be objective. I couldn't pairwise compare and say, I don't like the way that you drive a Subaru. I had to be objective throughout the process. And it didn't take into consideration that much my personal perspective as the actual, objective way of evaluating these specific items. Now, the optimization part of you will say that's better, right? However, in practice, if I was to decide, that's not very good. If, however, I want to show these results to my car evaluating website, this would be much better because it can be used and you are really not comparing any of the pairs. You are looking at each of them with respect to your ideal. I don't know if you can notice, but I managed at least to put the Mini Cooper up high with a lot of work, as you can guess. But it did manage to get quite high compared to others. Now, at this point, when you fill in this table, you have finished from the ratings. So you have again to fill in two tables, one, the initial criteria, and one that has the scales. I really say that in smaller models, I would give the priorities. I will not evaluate the scales. I do the evaluation of the scales only when we are talking about really, really important decisions, and I need to fine-tune those scales. And I have no idea also what should be the priority. That's also a point. And then I come over here, I add all my alternatives, evaluate them, and see what results I'm getting. And I'm done from the perspective of ratings.